In this video, I'm going to use special right triangles to solve some problems. I'm going to use the properties of those special right triangles that were discussed in the previous video. So if you haven't checked that out, please do so you can see where these properties come from. These first two problems we're going to are 45, 45, 90 right triangles. I know they're 45, 45, 90 right triangles, even though the angles are not labeled. I could tell that they are because they're isosceles. Isosceles right triangles are always 45, 45, 90s. And again, I tell these isosceles because, well, two sides are the same length. We saw in the previous video that 45, 45, 90 right triangles, that there's a connection between the sides and the legs and the hypotenuse. Namely, that if you know what a leg is, then the hypotenuse is just that same length times the square root of 2. So in this case, I know that a leg is 22 units long. If I multiply that to the square root of 2, then I get whatever the hypotenuse is. In this case, the hypotenuse happens to be x. So x is 22 times the square root of 2. And the same game over here, only this time I'm looking for the leg and I know the hypotenuse. But the same setup applies. The hypotenuse, whatever that is just a leg times the square root of 2. So if I take a leg and I multiply the square root of 2, I get whatever the hypotenuse is. In this case, that's 2 roots of 2. There's a lot of ways you could solve this. You could solve it by just inspection, by looking at it and telling what x has to be. If you aren't positive what it needs to be, you can do a little bit of algebra to get x by itself, just like we would any other equation. If I want to get x by itself, I'll divide by what's being multiplied to it. Divide by square root of 2. Something divided by itself is 1. And hey, what do you know? Something divided by itself will be 1. 2 times 1 is 2. You also might have been able to solve this just by looking at it, because something times root 2 is equal to 2 roots of 2. What does that something have to be? X has to be 2.